Hello, my name is Haley Osborn, and I'm a Kennesaw State University student working towards my master's degree in instructional technology with an endorsement in gifted education. I currently teach 6th grade earth science and 7th grade accelerated language arts at Lost Mountain Middle School. During the time of my capstone proposal, COVID was very rampant, and we had to issue out all of our available technology. Therefore, I had to look really closely for a problem that could be improved with the use of little or even no technology. I decided to place my focus on the students, and when I looked closely, I realized that there was an issue. For us at Lost Mountain, our issue was that there was a great lack of students taking ownership of their learning. With the lack of student ownership, we also had a direct correlation on our student achievement scores as well, with students scoring lower on their assessments and in a score tests. Therefore, I decided to focus on increasing student ownership so that we can better understand students' abilities and comprehension of the content and standards. While there was a lack of technology at our school, I still utilized it by incorporating technology labs, WebQuest videos, and simulations whenever I could. And to increase student ownership, I made the decision to do so with the use of interactive notebooks. I began my project with what every single teacher does a whole lot of, which is planning. I began to create and cultivate lessons over the summer to prepare for the 4 months of my capstone project. I collaborated with my colleagues to discuss the technology infrastructure. We talked about different activities and labs and simulations that would be appropriate for our students and how we would incorporate those into our left and right pages and how students could reflect on those through different writing assignments and videos. We also discussed and really challenged ourselves by making sure that each standard had a learning target that went with it so students could directly see exactly what they were supposed to be learning from that learning target. So my next step was to introduce students on what an interactive notebook was, how to organize, and really how to utilize it, which included, those left and right pages as well. I also included notebook personalization for students to make it feel more like themselves so that they would feel more responsible for it. Over the next few weeks, I planned to reinforce the organization and structure of the interactive notebooks, and that included making sure that I had notebook checks so that students knew exactly what I was looking for on certain pages, and even a quick little interactive notebook quiz, which allowed them, the opportunity to make sure they were putting the right things in the right place. One way that I wanted to increase student ownership was to teach them how to accurately reflect on their work, which is the next thing that I taught the students. I gave them a variety of ways of reflecting, such as writing through different writing assignments and videos. My evaluation plan was broken up into 3 different objectives. The first objective focuses on students learning to set up and use their interactive notebooks. The second objective really looked into how students were learning how to write their reflection and then also demonstrating the ability to do that in a variety of ways, whether it was through writing, through reflecting through videos, making sure they were answering all the reflection questions thoroughly and not just with a basic simplistic answer. And then my third objective was to ensure that students learned how to grade their own reflections. So if they could look through their reflections and see that they were gaining their ownership, we were on the right track. So the method to do that was to evaluate each of those objectives was to measure the growth of student ownership, which was determined by a pre, mid, and post survey throughout the semester. And of course, after you evaluate, you have to have the results. And so students did extremely well with organizing their interactive notebooks. With the implementation of in and out activities, students were forced to stay organized because they had certain pages for specific information. The Microsoft Forms seemed to show the student data the most efficient way. I was able to quickly see how students rated their ownership and the explanation of why they thought they had improved in their ability to take ownership of their learning. Students even mentioned in their forms that they were able to increase their ownership of their learning because of all of the learning that was right there in front of them. They had access to it and they were able just to quickly refer to it. They were able to see their prior learning and learn knowledge and saw how it progressed throughout the unit. They also indicated that they could tell based on their grades per learning target whether they had mastered a standard or not. This revealed how much effort they needed to put into reviewing for their assessments. They also stated having access to this information made them feel more confident in what they understood from class. I found that this capstone project was quite successful. Students successfully met the majority of the project outcomes. Each student showed some increase of ownership through this project. About 80% of my students increased their ownership of learning by 20%. The other 20% of my students increased their ownership by 10%. The lower percentage of students could be contributed to a learning disability as well. So I didn't want to, state that they had to reach a certain percentage of growth. As long as they did grow, I highly encouraged that. Overall, I was incredibly impressed with the student ownership of learning. And I really love this quote that one of my students left on their forms reflection. So they stated that they felt more confident in their ability to understand the Earth, Moon, and Sun unit because of their interactive notebook. I think this really goes to show and prove that by having the information right there in front of them, easily accessible, easily able to reflect back on and review, that it was truly helpful in them taking ownership of their ability to learn. Throughout the capstone project, I learned an abundance of information about technology, facilitation, and leadership. I learned that I had to be greatly flexible and keep an open mind. A lot of the times the technology that I planned for did not always work out. Either we didn't have access to it, the video wouldn't load properly, the web quest links didn't work right on the student device and it worked correctly on a teacher device. And so we definitely had to be flexible in our activities and different things we had planned for our students. But I did get the opportunity to grow in my leadership as well. And I had the opportunity to host a professional development session on internet tools. And I thought this was really fun and exciting because in the next few months, we actually received one-to-one devices for all of our students. And so that session on internet tools become very prevalent and relevant in what we were doing with our students, as we needed a plethora of tools in our tool belt so that we could, easily access those and use them and utilize them in our classroom. Throughout this time, I also had the opportunity to grow in leadership because I got to talk with all of my colleagues about the technology infrastructure that we had at the school and why a lot of our computers and things weren't working either properly or up to date or even at the speed that they should be. And so I definitely grew tremendously as a leader in technology, and I learned a lot about how to facilitate that technology through my capstone, even though it wasn't totally focused around technology. Thank you.